What's going on, everybody? Welcome to episode 41 of Lobbing Scorchers. This is Ari Lillianwall. I've got producer Noah here with me for a quick hitter episode today. Noah, how you feeling, man?
We don't shy away from bye weeks, Ari.
We don't. There, the Seattle Sounders play on Saturday. It's Thursday right now. There's not going to be a heck of a lot of shelf life on this one, but we decided to lay it down anyway because there was a couple things that we wanted to talk about, and we figured we'd riff on a little preview of Saturday's Seattle Sounders match at Sporting Kansas City, the club of professional wrestling enthusiasts. And we had a coach firing in MLS, so we here at Lobbing Scorchers always need to react and give our thoughts anytime a coach gets the axe around MLS. And this is one that has ties to Seattle. Yeah. So we're going to talk about that. But before we get into it today, as always, I'd like to thank all of our paid subs. We love and appreciate you guys and all the support. I'm going to read off the whole list again, Noah, because that's how much I appreciate all our subscribers. Nate Bowling, my guy, miss you on Twitter, but thank you for the support. We got Joey, Brenna, Pete, Rhombus, Nate, Tyler, Owen, David, Christopher Maley, Bill Breitenbach, Mike, Aaron B., Derek Richards, Sounder Naves, Dan Pavetto, Mike Standish, Ryan Shane, Eric Stanley, my nephew CJ Miles Marinakis, Andy Hill, Ian Mitchell, and Greg Hoker. Love and appreciate you all. If you'd like to support the show, all you have to do is go to podcast.lobbingscorchers.com, click on the little heart, and you can pledge however much you want. Not obligatory, but much appreciated. And as I always do, I'd like to plug the Lobbing Scorchers YouTube. No, we've summited 100 subscribers.
I know we did.
Very happy to see that. Triple digits, baby. Last time I looked at it, we were at like 105. We might even be higher than that. So we're doing not bad over there on YouTube for just starting out. Happy to hit triple digits and appreciate everyone who has followed us on there.
It's like rolling. It's the guy rolling the big boulder up the hill. It never stops because once we surmount 100, it's like the boulder's back at the bottom. We need 125 now.
Exactly. Let's set the next benchmark as 125. Once we hit that, it'll be 150 and so on and so forth until we hit the ultimate goal, which is
passing Mr. Beast.
10 million. Yeah. What does Beast have?
I don't know.
Okay, well,
a billion?
I don't know. Needless to say, the YouTube is doing quite well. And if you're listening to this right now and you haven't done it yet, sub to the Lobbing Scorchers YouTube. Go do it. It takes like 2 seconds.
It's free. 99.
It's free, and you pump our numbers. And if you don't want to be a paid sub, that's honestly a good compromise.
Yeah.
You just sub to the YouTube. Let's get into it, Noah. We've got a little bit to talk about today. The first thing we were going to talk about was Pedro de la Vega. Brian Schmetzer had a quote at a recent training session regarding his progress as they keep trying to get him back on the field, which they have not been able to do yet. He got on the field in the Whitecaps game, correct?
Yep.
And then he hasn't played since. There's been no confirmed word of a setback, but it seems like he's not ready yet. And then when he was asked specifically about it at training, Schmetz said, quote, "We're trying to get him up to speed and it hasn't happened. I'm trying to help as much as I can, but I'm not going to push the kid. If it was a playoff situation or something, I might push a little harder." So that's not great.
No.
When he actually got minutes in the Vancouver game, I was hopeful that meant they were ramping him up to be able to, play regularly and that he would be, that he was physically there and ready to take on the physical load of being a professional soccer player. And I think, from seeing that quote, it's clear that hasn't happened yet. And, it's just unfortunate. We've talked about a lot how big of a storyline his signing was for this team this season. And basically how this whole season was predicated on, you had a team that struggled quite a bit on offense for lengthy stretches last year. And, Pedro de la Vega's signing and the creativity and statistical production that he was hopefully supposed to provide, that was the primary X factor that was going to give this team a boost and push them to a level that they couldn't quite get to last year when they were a playoff team, but not one that had enough firepower to make a serious run at MLS Cup or even the Western Conference Final. They got shut out at home and bounced in the first round of the playoffs by LAFC and Dennis Bouanga last year. And this was supposed to be the thing that pushed them to the level above that. And, in the absence of him being able to play, you have essentially what you have is the exact same team as last year, but Ruidiaz and JP are a year older.
Yeah.
That's what you have.
Well, you got Moose now.
So, I mean, you got Moose, but realistically, it's the same squad.
Yeah.
That was a, 1.3 to 1.5 points per game team for most of last year. They're not even performing at that clip so far this year. They're still struggling on offense, and they've had a ton of injuries, including this super debilitating one to De La Vega. But basically, I'll tell you how I'm looking at it, Noah. The way I'm looking at it at this point is that any minutes or production that you get from De La Vega this year is just got to be considered a bonus. And I'm kind of going into the rest of the season under the impression that he's going to not play very much, if at all. I don't really know how else to look at it at this point.
No, he's like the light rail. When he works, he's beautiful. But when he doesn't work, it's a pain in the ass. My question is to you, Ari, let's say he goes through this season and he doesn't play another minute, which is like the literal worst case scenario. Next year,
and probably the most likely outcome at this point.
Yeah. Next year he becomes a full DP. When do you move on?
I mean, it's just really contingent on what they find about his physical health. Because, like, what you can't do is the exact same thing next year that you did this year, which is trying to ramp him up and hoping he gets healthy and then having it just be not physically viable. But it's just tough because, muscle injuries, in theory, you should be able to just shut him down for a period of time that allows for it to heal and then ramp him back up. But these things linger, and it can be like a chronic thing almost for certain players, and you have to hope that's not the situation. I think the question is, and what a lot of people are debating is, should you have signed him in the first place?
Yeah.
Because he's had an ACL in his career, and honestly, he was considered the type of prospect in Argentina before he did his ACL that could have been on a trajectory towards, an overseas club, like a big money type transfer. And that's sort of, that was sort of the intriguing value of this signing, is that it was a little bit of a distressed asset, right? In the sense that it was a player that was coming out of Argentina, considered to have immense upside, like play in Europe and be a big time player there type upside, but did his ACL and then worked his way back from that. But the thing is, he had this hamstring a couple other times also. So he's had a lot of injuries in his career that arguably could have and should have been accounted for when they were making the player evaluation for the signing. At the same time, I see the flip side of it, which is that, you can't necessarily base your signings on a hamstring injury that you think is going to heal, Like, if you think you have a player that can be a really big time player for you, I can't say if I was in the situation of making the evaluation that I would necessarily say, I'm not going to sign this guy because he pulled his hamstring.
Mm-hmm.
But, I mean, when you look at how it's worked out, I think you could definitely argue that they should have accounted for that because they haven't been able to get him on the field. So it's definitely tough, but it's a fair question. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm concerned with it. Like, we obviously see the positives that he brings for the 10 minutes that he plays, but my concern is, like, if you're really truly building this roster out for the 2025 Club World Cup, like Adrian said recently in a Sound at Heart interview, that's a full DP spot he's going to take up next year. And if he hasn't played like any minutes, I'm going to be honest, like, you seriously have to consider like your options there, because he's going to be outside of the U22 signing range. He's going to be making just as much money. And I just, like, production wise, it's MLS. Your DPs have to hit. This is what happened with Rigoni. That's why he's no longer at Austin. Like,
yeah,
he's gone. He didn't perform. He didn't play. Like, they shipped him. That sucks. That's like one of the shittiest things to hear, especially with like a young player who's, under 25, but that could be the reality. That said, who knows what's going to happen? And I do not envy literally a single person on the medical staff or him. Like, I can't even imagine mentally what he's going through.
Yeah.
Because it's like you sign this huge deal. You come to a country that you have never lived in before. I don't know if his family's here, but regardless, like, that's got to be really isolating and mentally tough. And like the side that a lot of people don't talk about with injuries is that mental side and recovering and being able to play 100% after a lingering injury or a continuous injury, because you really do mentally slow yourself down.
Yeah, I definitely feel bad for the kid. I was at his intro press conference, and he's so excited to be here, and he's clearly extremely talented. You can see that even from the very few minutes that he has played. Like, he's made an impact in the time he's been on the field, which has been barely any minutes at all. So, I mean, hopefully they can get him on the field this year, but I'm not banking on it. I'm the way I'm thinking of it is he's probably, I mean, I hate to say it, but he's probably going to get shut down and play very little, if at all, this year, just because it just seems like his body is not reacting to the rehab that they're doing. And every time they ramp him up, I don't know if it's setbacks or the mental side of it or what, but it just seems unlikely that you're going to be getting any sustained contributions from him this year, which is extremely unfortunate, because I do think that, I mean, that puts a pretty hard cap on the ceiling of the team. The ceiling of the team was based on him adding an element that you didn't previously had that can elevate the whole offense. This exact same offense that they had last year, which is what they're running this year, that can get you to the playoffs.
Yeah.
It can get you to 45 to 50 points maybe, but once you get to the playoffs and you're playing these really explosive, dynamic teams that can hang 3 to 5 goals on you in any given game, and they have DPs that are putting up 10, 15 goals, 10, 15 assists, and you run across firepower like that, you need to be able to fight fire with fire in those situations. That's something that Seattle has been able to do in the past to win the trophies that they have. But this group as currently constituted, I mean, I don't know if anyone thinks that there's that amount of firepower in this. Like, that firepower was supposed to be drastically enhanced by De La Vega. So if you don't have that, then
how important does that make the summer transfer window then, do you think? Because you have a shot and you have the rest of your allocation money to potentially bring in something or buy someone out, or what are we thinking?
I think it's important, and you can get better. I don't know. I question, I guess, how much the resources that they currently have can elevate them, because I mean, I think realistically what they need to do is get the types of DPs that these other teams with a ton of firepower have, that are producing, that are putting up. You need your DPs to be putting up these like gaudy stats and really carrying your team, until you have that. I think it caps your ceiling, and you can make supplementary additions that, sustain your floor and give you a bit of a higher ceiling. But I think the question you have to ask is like, is what you have MLS Cup contending? Like, can you make a run, and can you go head to head with these elite teams in the league? I don't know if you can address that in this upcoming transfer window. Yeah. I mean, I just maybe you can, but it would take some like money balling. It would take some savvy work. That's not impossible, but it would be. I think that would be difficult. That's just how I see it.
Yeah, I mean, I know Craig I guess it was a pre-recorded interview, but on the show that you're generally on KJR with Jackson Feltz, shout out, friend of the pod. Craig had said, their big target was a striker, and that he understands that the team's not shipping goals. The problem is the team can't score. Like, he said that. Like, he's very aware.
The defense is pretty good.
Yeah, the defense is good. But, so he said that they have targets. Like, they have big targets. And what that tells me is that whether it's the summer or next season, I don't think Raul will be here on the contract that he's on now. And I think
unless he starts like playing 2019 Raul.
I don't even think so. I don't even think that like his performance will change like his production over the last 2 seasons. Like, I don't think you can ride like
You're probably right just because of what his age is.
yeah, like you can't ride a hot hand on a 34.
He's 33.
33, yeah. So like, yeah, like if he was hitting this year, yeah, like I wouldn't buy him out in the summer, but I think like buying him out or finding a way to move him in the summer is the right move. And I think that honestly, like I feel like the Sounders are smart enough to understand that that's got to be a possibility. So who knows what's actually going to happen though? That's the challenge, because you have to have a player that is good enough to replace that.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it'll certainly be interesting to track. We'll be tracking it here on the podcast. Let's talk about the Sporting Kansas City game, Noah. Keep this moving right along.
Did you see they added you? They came after you.
Wait, are you talking about how they said that the Seattle is one of the most unlikable clubs in MLS?
Yeah.
I thought that was a little bit rich coming from them.
Yeah.
But they're welcome to that opinion. Seattle is playing them at Children's Mercy Park on Saturday as part of the match day 19 slate in MLS, where there's only 4 games on Saturday. So it's a small slate. Seattle will be a part of it, back in action after having a bye week with the Columbus Crew choking and losing in the CONCACAF Champions Cup final. And Sporting KC, the club of professional wrestling enthusiasts, they're a bit of an interesting case study right now. They're one of the worst teams in Major League Soccer.
They're bad.
They're down horrendously bad. Like I've seen them down bad. They were down pretty bad at the start of last year too, and then they actually got really hot and were one of the better teams in the league down the stretch and made the playoffs and actually beat the top seed St. Louis City in the playoffs. So they were kind of in a similar situation last year and then put it together. But this is worse. Let me just read the numbers for you.
Yeah.
I mean, they're 2-9-5. 2-9-5.
Yeah.
Last in the West, and they're going into this game having lost 7 straight games. That's honestly like kind of hard to do in MLS. Like there's so much parity in the league, and you play so many games where there's teams that are playing rotated lineups and have tons of injuries and are coming in from really long road trips, that even when you're in bad form, you usually run into at least a draw or two somewhere along a 7-game sample. They've taken 7 L's in a row. And I will say, I was looking at the form guide, and it's not like they're getting boat raced in every single one of these games. They've been competitive in a few of them. But still, if you lose 7 straight in MLS, you are down really bad for that. Peter Vermees is not happy about it. I've been watching every single one of his press conferences. I love a Peter Vermees post-game L presser. He had the really good one that we recapped on the show a couple weeks ago, where he had, or I think on the Crew show actually. Yeah.
We did that one and the iPad one.
Yeah. So he's been popping off, and I really, it's funny. Any other team, a run of form like this, I think the coach's job status would be a big topic of debate. I really don't get that vibe at all from them. They're just going to ride Peter Vermees for as long as he wants to be the coach there. Last year, when they were in a really bad run of form, people were talking about it, and they ended up getting hot, and he saved his job. But I don't even know if that he saved his job. I think they probably would have just. He's got the most security in the league. I could be wrong. Maybe he's been there for long enough, and they're in a bad enough run of form right now that this is what finally does it. But that's not usually I have a good sensor for these things.
Yeah.
Remember, we're going to talk about Gonzalo Pineda, but I was saying, this is coming. You can read between the lines of the Garth Lagerwey interview. You can see how just the vibes around the club, you can tell when it's happening. I don't get that vibe with Peter Vermees. I think he's going to keep this job, like I said, for as long as he wants it. And we'll see if they can dig out of this. Seattle has gained a little bit of a reputation for being a get-right opponent for certain clubs.
Specifically Sporting?
Well, yeah, Sporting, and I was going to say the Portland Timbers.
True.
At past points. But the last time Seattle went to Children's Mercy Park, correct me if I'm wrong, but that was the game where Jordan Morris scored 4 goals. Leon Chu had 4 assists.
That's the last time any Sounder has had a hat trick.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. That was probably the best performance of last season. Honestly, a road game where you hang 4 goals the opponent.
That or
And
Charlotte.
all 4 of them. Yeah, the Charlotte game. But I mean, that game was a tie. They won the Sporting KC game. Jordan had 4 goals, so they know that they can win there. And this Sporting KC team, when I look at it, it's very much pretty much the same group that they had last year that got really hot last year. So it's not like there's no talent on the team. But I mean, I was just looking at it like I was kind of looking at it like, all right, why are they so bad right now? Like, what is going on? And I mean, it's an obvious thing, but their DPs are not really producing. Johnny Russell and Alan Polito have combined for 5 goals, and then you have Daniel Salloway, who only has 1 goal. He's got 3 assists, but that's just pretty anemic production from the guys that are supposed to carry the load for you. And one of Johnny Russell's goals came last week when they were down 3-0. So he hasn't scored. He's very many, if any, goals of consequence this year. He's 34. So I think it sort of looks like a situation where a little similar to Seattle, to be honest, where you've got a couple DPs that are a little on the older side and aren't producing like they used to. And that can really drag you down in MLS. And it's Seattle's at least like in the playoff mix. Like Sporting KC, we're talking about wooden spoon type stuff for them.
I mean, they're not beating the Revs to the wooden spoon, but
I mean, they might, man. Like, let's just look at this real quick. Sporting KC's at 11 points, 2-9-5. The Revs are at 10 points, 3-10-1. That's not that different. Like, they're on relatively similar paces. And if I had to put a prediction on it, like, I think Sporting KC will turn it around to some degree. It is what they did last year. Got off to an incredibly bad start and then got hot. And like I said, it's not like they're getting blown out in most of these games. So I would be surprised if they stay this bad all year and are wooden spoon contending. But they are wounded right now, and I think that gives Seattle. For Seattle, like, when you're playing an opponent that's down this bad, you have to take at least a point. You have to take at least a point. You should be able to win this game, honestly. Like, this team is not good right now. They're more focused on mixed martial arts in all likelihood than they are in winning the game. So, get a result. That should be attainable here. Like, we always talk about when Seattle's playing a desperate and wounded opponent. That's not always a good thing. You have a team who's playing at home who really needs a win. They're probably going to come out and try and get on top of you. But I mean, they've probably been getting that messaging for the last, like, however many weeks that they need to start winning these games, and they haven't been able to do it yet. If you could go in there and beat them, make it 8 straight L's, I don't think it would be the final nail for Peter Vermees's job, but like, it's at least a discussion.
Yeah.
It's
got to be like whiteboard, corkboard locker room activity to be like, hey, remember when this dude clowned on you after his player chokeslammed you? Christian, you better bang in 3 goals, buddy.
Yeah. 8 straight L's in MLS. Like I said, man, that's like legitimately hard to do.
Yeah.
That's hard to do.
I think USL teams have done better in like Open Cup than like sport. Like if you compared, 8 straight L's, like no, like even USL teams at the mid level would do better against MLS clubs.
Man, it's a tantalizing proposition to be able to send them to 2-10-5. Maybe the Revs run into a dub in their game against the Red Bulls, which is unlikely, but then Sporting KC would be bottom of the league. Man, you have a real chance here. You have a real chance. It feels like too much to ask, doesn't it, for them to just win this game?
Absolutely.
My prediction would be like a 0-0 or a 1-1 draw for this game between these two teams, neither of which have been lighting the world on fire on offense this year.
No.
But we'll be watching, and we'll be here with the post-game reaction show, so stay tuned for that. Unless you had anything else on Sporting KC, I was going to hit a couple of the other news items from around MLS, and then we can call it a day for episode 41. Keep it a little short one here today.
Yeah, no, shout out to my former employer. That's all I got to say.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough scenes for them these days.
I know.
It's sort of, this is the Noah derby, isn't it?
It really is. I got my start there as a photo intern, and that was the season where it was the season after they had won the Open Cup. So everything kind of just went down from there. So I'm sorry? ? Maybe it was my fault.
They've been a good team for like the way I usually think of them before the last couple years is like a good team that's a fringe contender, but that never can they always choke in the playoffs.
They also build their roster like MLS 1.0.
They were also subject to, they're still, I think part of the reason they were so hyped on the professional wrestling thing was they're still mad about the 2016 playoff game where Seattle beat them on their way to MLS Cup, which in the VAR era, Seattle would have lost that game because what happened in that game, which people kind of forget this, but and correct me if my memory is wrong, but Nelson Valdez scored the game winner, which was he was offside. He was offside, and the ref didn't. But it was very borderline. But he was offside, and Seattle won on that goal. But Matt Beasler, I think, scored a goal for Sporting KC that was called offside, and he was not offside. So they really the fact that Seattle won that game. They got a little blessed with that. Sporting KC fans were mad. They were not happy about that, which I get it. But I mean, that's, it's too bad. It's unfortunate. But and Seattle went on to win MLS Cup that year. So I think when their website talks about how Seattle's the most unlikable team in the league, and they get all hyped up when one of their players does a rock bottom maneuver against a Seattle player on the field, I think that's where that animosity comes from. Is they still feel like they should have won that playoff game. The one thing I will say about that is in the VAR era, you don't know that the game would have played out the exact same way had Beasler's goal stood. Then maybe Seattle's pushing harder. They get an equal. The whole game would have been entirely different. So you can't really just look at it oh well, our goal got waved off and their goal stood when it should have got waved off. Therefore, it should have been 1-0 the other way. That's the butterfly effect, guys.
Yeah,
that's what I've always said in response to that. But I do understand that it's frustrating to have both a call where a team has an offside goal that's allowed to stand and you have a goal that's called offside that wasn't in the same game. I don't begrudge that necessarily.
I still think it's funny, though, that they think we're the most hated or we're one of the worst. I don't think about you, little bro. I don't think about you.
Definitely not this year when you're 2-9-5. I mean, for as much as we've been clowning on the Sounders this year, they're not 2-9-5.
They're literally just a bit club. The only thing that they're known for is literally a wrestling move. That and having the same DP since MLS began in 1996.
He has been on the team forever. And Polito has been a... whenever he plays, he's a good number 9 in the league, but they have a lot of the same issues with him that that Seattle's having right now. He's just, his hamstring is perpetually it's a little bit of a Ruidiaz situation with the Polito hamstring. We had a coach firing in MLS, Noah, which is
sound the alarm.
Sound the alarm. That's always a notable day for us here. Gonzalo Pineda out
My
Atlanta
king.
United. Yeah. Like I said earlier, the writing had been on the wall with this. I think I even said a couple weeks ago that it was a matter of when, not if. But there was a slight ray of hope when they went and boat raced Inter Miami. It was if he can springboard that into a little winning streak, maybe he saves his job. But then they went out in their next game and it looked pretty much exactly. They lost their 5th straight home game. Anytime you lose 5 straight at home, again, that's in the hard to do category.
Yeah,
that's worse than losing 7 straight league games, because your home games are really those are gimmies, especially for a club like Atlanta United that has prided itself since their inception on they have the biggest stadium in the league. Mm-hmm. It's one of the craziest atmosphere in the
their
league.
Fans
for
are
sure.
great.
Their fan base brings it.
They don't like
that's
us.
A stadium.
But...
Yeah. I mean, most unlikable club in the league.
Yeah.
Atlanta United. That's a stadium that I wanted to get to for a long time. I've never been to that one, but it's Gonzalo Pineda's tenure had started with a lot of hope and promise in Atlanta. I thought that it was a good hire for them, and I still think that based on where they were at and what they needed at the time, like you can't necessarily fault the process. That he met all the criteria for what they needed. They needed like a good vibes guy and culture builder after Gabriel Heinze tanked both of those things for them. Remember, he was like not giving players water at practice. And he was just kind of a prickly guy, like really frosty with the media. Just and the vibes around the team seemed horrible. And Gonzo, you know, for whatever you think of him as a coach, every media member that I've seen in Atlanta since he got fired has talked about like what a nice, accessible and just good guy he was. So they needed someone like that, and they needed someone like Domestic who had experience within the league, who knew the league, who had ideally won in the league, which Gonzo has. He won an MLS Cup with Seattle. He got a lot of credit for his game planning when he was an assistant here. So even though it didn't work out, I think the process behind the hire was sound. And I'll be honest, man, I've said this before, but I don't really know how much of their issues are down to coaching and tactics and stuff like that. Garth Lagerwey even said, I watched his media availability the other day, and he got asked about it. And he said that he has a similar philosophy on it to what I've expressed on this show. He even gave a number to it. He said, I look at it as 80% of the roster and the talent that you have, and then 20% of your success is down to coaching. Okay, well then, like, maybe what you should be looking at is the roster. And, you know, Garth touched on that. You know, he said that he feels like that the additions that they made were good, they were sound, and that they put whoever the coach was in a situation where they needed to see the results, like based on the additions that they made. But I mean, it's like, can you really say that definitively when you've had the results that they've had this year? Like maybe those additions weren't what you thought they were. I don't know. And then the other thing I'll say about that is just in general from watching Garth's availability, you know, he called it the most frustrating situation he's been in his career. But like, you know, you remember how Garth was when he was in Seattle, just how confident he was. He like Garth low-key is one of the swaggiest guys that's ever been in the organization. Yeah, he does. He legitimately does. And it seemed like his drip was like
his crown was slipping.
Yeah.
King,
like,
keep your head up.
He did not seem as confident and assured in himself as I remember him in Seattle.
Yeah.
And I think that's a little interesting because he's not really used to being in this situation. He's had a lot of success in the league. He won an MLS Cup with Real Salt Lake. He won a couple MLS Cups and CONCACAF with Seattle. Atlanta threw boatloads of money at him to try and fix a lot of what ailed them. And, you know, I'm sure on the business side and everything, that's come to fruition, but on the field they haven't gotten those results. And I don't know, it just seemed, I'd recommend watching his interview and see if you notice the same thing, because I was just it seemed like, you know, it's a guy who always has an answer to everything, and there was just a couple times where it just felt like he doesn't know what to say. He doesn't have the answers. So we'll see what happens with Atlanta United. They've got Rob Valentino. This is their bit. They hire a new coach. It doesn't work out. They fire him, and this guy, Rob Valentino, who's been on the staff for like 6 years, then they just make him the interim coach. And last time he was the interim coach, he actually went 4-2-2. And a lot of people were like, hire Valentino. And Garth said that Valentino is going to have a legitimate shot to make a case for the permanent job, and that if he does a good job, gets them in the playoffs, and makes a run. My impression of what Garth said was that in all likelihood, if that scenario takes place, they will give him the full-time job. And he actually referenced what happened with Schmetzer, where he I think the exact quote was like, I've had success believing in and empowering an interim coach before, which obviously he's talking about when Schmetz took over for Ziggy, and then they went on to win MLS Cup that year. We'll see if Rob Valentino can do that. I have my questions on if this roster is as good as Garth is saying.
And they're shipping away Yakimakis.
Garth was really saying, like, this roster, I fixed it. Me and Boca, if we fixed it, we made these signings that the roster is good now, and I don't understand like why we aren't getting the results that we thought we would be getting, and we're hopeful that another coach, a new voice in the building, will be able to get that. But then he also did say that, if that doesn't happen and we don't get those results, then we're going to have to take a hard, long look at the foundation that we've got here. And we might have to, he used the term start over.
Yeah.
Nuclear
bomb, bro.
They could be blowing it all up in Atlanta.
Which it honestly feels like, though, because they're shipping away Giacomakis for $10 million.
That's been rumored, yeah.
Which, he's literally doing the Seattle thing. He's bombing, he's nuking the coach and then bringing in a new DP. That's like literally his model. 2016 Seattle Sounders. I don't know.
They're getting a bag for Giacomakis if that deal with Cruz Azul gets done.
Yeah, it's smart. It's a great business
I'm taking
deal.
that, especially with where they are on the table. I'm taking that all day. But Giacomakis has been good for them. As far as the problems that they have, the number 9 spot and production out of there, that hasn't really been one of their problems. They're one of the funniest clubs in the league to watch because they're actually at times really good and really dynamic on offense. Thiago Almada is definitely, I would say he's one of the most raw talented players in the league.
Yeah, easily
with his playmaking, and he's a very good finisher too. So the combination of him and Giacomakis is a very good 1-2 duo, and they have another winger whose name I can't quite remember, Saba something, but he's at 8 goal contributions this year. So they're very good and entertaining at times, and productive on offense. Although that had kind of slipped in Gonzo's last couple weeks, they weren't scoring as many goals. But I think at their baseline level, they're a good attacking team, but just the goals that they concede sometimes, I enjoy tracking it every week. What awful goal is Atlanta United going to concede this week? And it was they did the thing that Seattle does sometimes, where they score a goal and it's a really nice goal and they take the lead and then just immediately concede instantly. And they did that so many times this year. I mean, if there's a reason that Gonzo didn't keep his job, I think that particular thing might have been what drove it over. I can just imagine Garth and Bocanegra and Arthur Blank sitting in a suite watching that, and every time they score a goal, they immediately get bammed on.
Yeah,
that's got to be.
They have a notebook sitting in front of them with tally marks for every single one. Once you hit 20, you're dead.
Anyway, we'll see what happens with Atlanta United. It'll be interesting because, they market themselves as one of the big bad clubs in the league. Haven't really been that the last few years. Really, since that Joseph Almiron era, they have not been that. So
they hit so hard on that though.
They were living a charmed life with that one.
That was.
I remember thinking at the time too, the reality of MLS is going to come for this team, and they're probably not going to like it. It's not always a fairy tale like that in this league.
No.
But that reality came for them even harder than I could have expected. I just had one more thing to hit on here, Noah, and then we can get out of here. The Columbus Dispatch was doing some conspiracy theory mongering regarding the Columbus Crew's defeat to Pachuca in the CCC final. Now, I don't subscribe to the Columbus Dispatch. I subscribe to a lot of these papers. I subscribe to the AJC. I subscribe to the Philly Inquirer. I subscribe to a bunch of them, but for whatever reason, I hadn't subscribed to the Dispatch. But it seems like, just based on the headline, Noah, they were implying that that there might have been some malfeasance at play with how the entire Columbus Crew roster and coaching staff got viciously sick and was blowing up their bathrooms for 2 days straight before the Champions Cup final. Now,
I wouldn't say they were just insinuating it too.
Okay, so do you have it pulled up?
I mean, I'm pulling it up right now, but I did read through it. I was able to tear down the firewall and get in there and read it.
Okay,
but they interviewed club physician, I believe. And he basically did everything but say it didn't happen. He's like, I can't rule out sabotage, basically, is what he said. It was really weird. It was really weird. So I don't know.
All right, so
I'm pulling it up right now. Keep yapping. So
okay, I do think that this is in the category of conspiracy theory mongering until actual evidence is provided. I mean, not to add fuel to the fire though. Like,
yeah,
it does seem weird, man. I'm not gonna lie. Like, my first reaction is like, I mean, I don't know. It's really anything could have happened. They could have gotten sick by really random, unlucky, innocent means.
Yeah.
And I think, honestly, that's probably the most likely outcome. But the conspiracy monger in me both wants to believe, and there's like a percentage of me that does believe that there was malfeasance at play here. And I say that somewhat in jest. But if it did, I'll say this. If it did come out that there was malfeasance at play here, I wouldn't be that shocked. It's CONCACAF. Like, would you be that shocked?
No, I mean, I just don't I don't know how they would do any of that. What I think it is literally like,
I know how they would do it.
How would they do it? I need to know.
I mean, they probably have a chef at the team hotel. You just get to that chef, have him slip a little something in the food.
Slip a little what, Ari? What do you? It's like, what are we doing? Bioweapons now?
Yeah, I mean,
MLS is using bioweapons.
That's what's being alleged here. No, it's not MLS. It would be Liga MX in this case.
Yeah. Well, I just think it was neurovirus.
Yeah,
because that's like.
That's what happened.
Like,
that's
come
what
on.
happened.
Like, that's
what
like,
happened.
that is it travels fast.
That is definitely, that is almost certainly what happened, but it's a lot more fun to conspiracy theory monger like the Columbus Dispatch. I would like to believe the conspiracy just because it's a more compelling storyline than just standard neurovirus, which that is what happened.
No, I agree, but sorry, I'm still trying to pull up this article, but it's like being amazingly difficult to get into. But I don't know how much more can we riff on this before we just chalk this article.
Yeah, I mean, it's fine. I think we got the important stuff in. If you do want to see what the extent of the conspiracy theory mongering was, you can go ahead and subscribe to the Columbus Dispatch. Their tweet had a lot of quote tweets. When I saw it, the response was a lot of people didn't agree with their ultimate conclusions. They thought it was sore losing, and honestly, it probably is.
Yeah.
But it was unfortunate for the Columbus crew. I would have liked to see them play that game at full strength to see what happened. But and then they just dropped another headline. They just dropped the new one. That the crew GM Tim Bezbatchenko, one of the best GMs in the league, is
he's leaving
departing for the Premier League. Does it say what team, Noah? He
will be going to AFC Bournemouth.
Okay, Bezbatchenko to Bournemouth. Shout out Brad Smith, right?
Yeah, Brad Smith. Yeah. That's
actually big news, because what I will tell you about Bezbatchenko is everywhere he's been, like dating back to his Toronto FC tenure, he is. I think he's one of the best roster architects I've seen in the league for sure. Remember how good those Toronto FC rosters were?
Oh,
with
yeah.
Giovinco and peak Mike Bradley and the whole gang, Josie Altidore, like that was all Bezbatchenko, and he ended up parlaying that into a gig with Columbus where they were. I mean, remember how down bad they were when he took over? They were about to leave the city.
Yeah,
they were about to leave the city. Bezbatchenko got there. The Save the Crew movement happened, and they hired off Wilfred Nancy, but Wilfred Nancy wouldn't be having the success that he's having in Columbus if Bezbatchenko hadn't been a beast with the roster build. Like, if you can just go up and down that roster, and it's just really impressive work, very well-rounded, great production from all their highly paid players. Their players fit really well together. All the players that he acquired fit into the vision and identity of what Wilfred Nancy wants to do. That's a big loss.
Yeah,
that is actually a legitimately big loss.
Yeah, no, I haven't even processed it, but I want to know what you think about how this is going to impact the legacy of Wilfred Nancy, especially after a big loss.
Well,
and like, he's going to have to deal with the fallout of losing CCL or even just going through CCL.
I think, are you talking about Bezbatchenko leaving or the CCC loss?
Bezbatchenko leaving and what that means for Wilfred Nancy's tenure in Columbus necessarily. I
think the good thing for him is that he has a very strong foundation in place. And I think he's among the smartest coaches in the league, if not the smartest coaches in the league. He's learned the league quite a lot now, having been in it for a few years. first with CF Montreal, now with Columbus. So I think he has a very good chance of still sustaining success with the foundation that they do have. But they have to make a good hire here to replace Bezbatchenko, someone who knows the league and can maintain what they have, but also build on it going forward. And that's not necessarily going to be easy. And it could make life more difficult for Wilfred Nancy because, there's a lot of roster turnover in this league year to year. And when you lose someone who knows the league that well and has had that much success with his roster building, it's definitely it's hard to imagine that they upgrade from Bezbatchenko.
Yeah, no.
I don't think there's any way. So they're as far as who replaces him, no one's going to have the acumen and successful track record that he has.
Yeah. Also, I wanted to note, I was wrong. It wasn't the doctor that said this. This is a quote from Bezbatchenko about the conspiracy theories. He says, preparations for games is meticulous, right down to the menus, he said. Our dietitian and sports scientists map everything out, and it can almost seem monotonous. Protein, pasta, bread, fruit, vegetables. Every meal in Pachuca was planned, worked out with the hotel's kitchen staff in advance. Was the chicken undercooked? Was it something else? I don't know. Getting food right shouldn't be that hard. Bezbatchenko admitted, I can't rule out subterfuge, but stopped there.
Wow.
He said that, to his knowledge, no one else at the hotel was affected.
We need the Always Sunny meme.
Yeah, literally.
That's what we need.
I dropped that one. Yeah, but wow, that was a Columbus Crew news hour. Holy.
Yeah, that was red hot. We did a lot of Atlanta United and Columbus Crew on this show. Let's call it right there, Noah.
Yeah.
We only got 10 minutes here before I get on the old MLS editorial desk, so I think it's time to get out of here.
Get back to work, buddy.
Thank you all for tuning in to episode 41. We know this one doesn't have as much shelf life as they might normally have, but we appreciate you tuning in regardless. Thank you again, as always, to our listeners for all the support. We really appreciate what we've seen in terms of listenership over the last couple months here. Like, comment, subscribe, write reviews on
share with
whatever.
Bezbatchenko?
Share with your Columbus Crew and Atlanta United friends for takes on their clubs.
Subscribe to the YouTube.
Subscribe to the Lobbing Scorchers YouTube. That's what I was missing. We'll see you for episode 42 after this game against Sporting Kansas City, the club of professional wrestling enthusiasts. Until then, we out.
Peace.